Hey everybody, welcome to the first R8 stream on my channel, not my channel, Pixelogic's channel, but my first R8 stream. You know, Danny, Mac, and Ashley had their R8 streams. Very excited to be sharing some of the new features here today. So I don't know if you guys saw, if anybody saw the streaming event that Pixelogic had. I'm sure some of you did. But yeah, really big release here with R8. Really excited about all these new features. I had some opportunity to play with them a little bit. Hopefully I can pass some of that along. Feel free to ask questions in the chat if you have them. But yeah, let's get started here. Let me pop out the chat so I can close the Twitch window here. So we've been doing a lot of character stuff lately, and I am excited to switch today to let's do some environment stuff today. I feel like I want to do I don't feel like I kind of have to. I want to do some environment props. You know, I think I could probably run through a good amount of them because they're not gonna be super high poly. They're kind of just sort of set dressing and things that sit off in the periphery of the game. So all I really need to do is just, you know, give some nice silhouette, nice shape. Maybe use some Boolean tools to cut into some base geo, and then yeah, just spin up some props here and start, you know, making some game ready meshes here. So here's a good start. Here's these are all set to game proportions. So these are all, you know, measured up to be exactly where they need to be in game. And what I want to work on is this little guy here, because what it's gonna eventually end up being in the game is right now it's just like sort of it's there, it's off to the side. It has little arms that shoot left and right when a player scores a goal. The little guy in the middle points left, points right, and sounds a little horn, but I really want to kind of spruce it up a lot more. I want to do a I want to sort of build in screens on it so it can have television screens wrapped around it, as well as do like a sort of a light and firework chamber in the middle, and then do make it basically have like wheels in the back, because what I wanted to be able to do is this little thing is going to be like the distributor of the disc, and we have a game mode where you know, it's kind of like a challenge mode where it would just sort of like, it would be like a feeder for your practice mode. So if you wanted to practice, you know, practice shots that curve wide left and hit the net or not or something like that, like this would be the thing that kind of just sat on the other side and fed you the ball. So it's going to need to be like sort of, the concept of it is like it's a mobile sort of station for distributing the disc, and at the same time it also has like, you know, television screens and celebratory devices to sort of signal when you've hit a goal or one of the other team scores. So, what's going on, guys? What's up, Index? Hey, so you, Sick Dude King, what's going on, everybody? Axel Chamberlain, how you guys all doing? But yeah, very excited to be using R8 today. I've got my R8 UI all set up, my live boolean there and all that, and been noodling with some of these new brushes. And yeah, so we'll dig into some of the R8 features, and feel free to ask. Lads, what's going on? Feel free to ask questions, you guys, if you're new to ZBrush or want some, you know, info on R8. Let's see if I can show. Some of my concepts here. This is a pretty rough sketch, but these are the kind of things that I'm looking for. I want to just, you know, stack it up, thin it, make it a little bit thinner, and then use sort of a display as opposed to, you know, the current like arm wavy system. If anybody's seen Disc Jam, there's like a couple of big arms. I want to sort of use a display and like kind of shoot out, make it a little bit more futury than it is right now. It's a little bit bulky, so that's what I'm going to be toying with today. And then, you know, I've got a few props here I want to work on. This, you know, the environment stuff, like I said, it's not super high detail because it's occupies so little space on screen. So, you know, I also want to make some trunks. I want to, like, you know, just basically build a lot of set dressing, because we're going to be, you know, expanding our map a little bit, and some of these props will go in the new map. And so I'm just, you know, just want to keep, you know, knock out some sci-fi props that kind of fit in the environment. And I don't think I have any other concepts, really. We have, like, you know, things like a couple things like this, like spotlights, searchlights rather, and some paneling, and just things that you know, to help spruce up our external area and build some of the environment stuff, basically. Did they add the reset a single brush option in R8? I don't believe so. That'd be news to me if there was. I'm only aware of the reset all brushes. Is that a request or something that you reset current brush? Yeah, there it is. I'm not sure if that was an R7 or not. But yeah, thanks for the heads up. I didn't realize that was a feature. Must have missed that. There's a lot of new stuff added to the brush creation menu. The multi-alpha brush is super interesting. You can basically use your 3D pieces, make them brushes, and then hop in and out of those brushes, and you can place them, scale them, and do really, you can turn them. So if you want to do some 3D geo, turn it on side, draw it out as an alpha. There's some really cool stuff you can do there. Yeah, a lot of new stuff. Hopefully, we, you know, just by the nature of working on props right now, we'll kind of get into some of the new stuff by necessity. You can see this. That's like kind of the direction of going. This thing. Want to use the slice tool to create polygroups and then use DynaMesh to separate objects if objects have a problem. Looks like it's all cut, but when I try to move one of the newly separated objects, it still seems to be connected and it stretches really bad between the two objects. So if I get your question, I think what you're trying to do, you got to remember to keep groups on in that case. So let me pull up some geo here. DynaMesh that. So here's some DynaMesh geo, it's all one polygroup, and it sounds like you want to slice away. So you want to slice off one of these ears, right? So I'll come down here, slice lasso, slice curve brush. Right, so you want polygroups, and then you re-DynaMesh. You want to make sure you DynaMesh with groups on. Right there, DynaMesh groups. And if I'm going to do that, I'm also probably going to do a polish, because of the fact that when you cut off that slice, it's nice to get, you know, a similarly rounded edge. But now those groups are completely separate. I can use my handy dandy Gizmo, which is also a new R8 feature. Honestly, the Gizmo, I was a big user of the transpose tool, but man, when the Gizmo came out, I honestly don't know what I'd do without it. It's such a good add. Let me get this mask here. So there's my mask. But yeah, so anyway, if you got the DynaMesh groups, you get that nice clean cut. You can DynaMesh it again, and so I hope that answers your question. What's up, Kyle? What's up, Panicus? How you guys doing? But yeah, Panicus, does that answer your question there? If you have it on, you don't need to have polish on, but I like polish because it cleans up that line right there and has a really nice cut right there. But yeah, if you got the groups option selected, you know, you could do something like that. Even slice a group into there. 90-degree group. And you can really actually do a kind of a nice little fracture if you wanted to control all the pieces. DynaMesh with groups on, and then also right there I'm doing with the Gizmo active with move mode selected over here. Control Shift tap, and that'll isolate your polygroup right there. Yeah, you can just pull all those things off. Control Shift tap, Control Shift tap, Control Shift tap. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Looks like similar, because what you're doing here with these curve brushes, you're doing essentially a trim operation, which amounts to a, when you re-DynaMesh that, it basically amounts to a close holes. After it uses basically the close holes operation to seal it, and you might have things that distort where the geo goes, because it tries to figure out how to close a gap and you haven't sort of told it how to. You know, there's a lot of ways you can do things like booleans are a good way to sort of separate pieces with sort of depth in a way that you can control, like how it cuts into the mesh. You did exactly like you, but you still get a stickiness between them. What do you mean by stickiness? Do you mean that there, where they're still together? That's what you're talking about. I mean, that the simple way to control that is have groups selected, have these be separate polygroups, and do a DynaMesh. Yeah, so I mean, that's the way to do that. I'm not sure. Yeah, so that last bit. Yeah, I mean, that's just simply the multi-groups DynaMesh. Just make sure you have that selected. And if you do and it's still happening, maybe do you have a custom UI or a custom menu, because that's certainly the operation that you need to be doing. Anyway, to work here. Yeah, Dougie makes a really good point there. You want to be DynaMesh first. That's something I probably didn't mention when I was DynaMeshing this, but like I DynaMeshed that first before I started diving into all that stuff. So I'm gonna hide these other pieces because I don't really need them at the moment. They're just kind of placeholders. I know I need to work to them. So this is really low poly, obviously. You know, this is basically a starting point. Probably keep the discs in there, just because I know that I want to have. That'll help me. That'll help keep me honest. As you can see, these kind of collide, and these little fins will sort of spin around. They'll be animated skeletal mesh. They'll spin around and like kind of flip the thing out. Yeah, Kyle, I was kind of talking about at the very beginning, but basically, yeah, I've got some environment needs, and I've been doing a lot of character stuff on the stream, and so I'm looking forward to doing a little bit of environment stuff today. I got a few props I want to work through. I want to basically turn this concept, turn what I've got here in the base mesh into that concept, and then I want to, where is it? I want to build some sci-fi trunks, or they kind of just scattered props around the map, as well as build some searchlights and more kind of fanfare, like fireworks and things like that. That'll be sort of adding to the fanfare and stuff, and just sort of doing a little bit of development on the map. So yeah. Hey, what's going on? Byron King Reborn, how you doing? In the past, I've only as an artist, I work on OurGameDiscJam, which is discjamgame.com. That's me and my partner's game. It's out now. But prior to that, I worked on Call of Duty, Tony Hawk, and Guitar Hero. However, not in an artistic capacity. I worked as an engineer in that regard. But I've always been, you know, trying to learn the art stuff and get better at the art stuff, and eventually decided to start doing it for our game, for our company. So that's kind of where I'm at now. Alright, anyway, so first thing I want to do is that this is 4 fins, because that's our old disc had 4 grips. This new one's got 3, so I wanted to clean that up and make sure that was these fins kind of matched up with it. So I'll probably just mesh these right through. So what I'm doing is just holding Alt, tapping all of the faces. I want to Q mesh, and then just pulling it right through. Oops. And it automatically knows just to seal that off. Gives me a fresh circle to work with. And this is, I like using ZModeler for this stage because this can get a lot more high detail. But for now, I'm just able to block things out and, like I said, match everything to where they are in game space and keep the symmetry around the disk circle and all that kind of stuff. So working as much as you can, building up your base mesh early is super helpful. I wonder if I could do a little radial symmetry of 3. Yeah, this circle geometry is not divisible by 3. So yeah, if this was the radius of this, not the radius, but if the radial spans of this was divisible by 3, it would work out nicely. But it's not. Just eyeball it. What's going on, Ash and Cruz? How you doing? Yeah, Brew Cold. I spent a little bit of time getting my UI so that I don't need to drill into the menus all that much. I'm still working out the drop a little clip curve there, so maybe that'll be right around there. I'm still working out the R8 for ZBrush 4 R8 release UI. There's some new features that I want to have in there and haven't quite found a real estate for them yet. Oh, you know what? I need one more panel here. So what I'm doing there is just while I'm Q-meshing, hold shift. I'll straighten it out. Not straighten it out, but it'll make it a move operation. Oops. Gizmo's down there. This little icon there is to go to unmasked mesh center. So that'll get it right where I want it. If I hit reset mesh orientation, say I have it, you know, maybe it's rotated off in a weird angle. If I hold Alt, hit the orientation, that'll put it back in world space. So I just know I'm going parallel to Y. Creased, group by normals, maybe like 20 creased poly groups. Yeah, that did it. Appreciate that, Ash Creatures. Made the object DynaMesh, then I slice, then I enable groups, re-DynaMesh, then I select the move tool, mask the poly group by clicking on it, then when I try to move, it gets to stretch as you demonstrated. What am I missing? I honestly, I really don't know. I mean, if you've done anything as you described, as I just demoed, I mean, you're going to get this exact result at least. I can't imagine there's something wrong with your build. I figure we're all on the same, the same release here.
Only the names have been changed.
But yeah, being able to slice off Geo, I'm not sure how that could be occurring. It's gotta be missing. You gotta be missing something. Do I unwrap Thomas Buren? Do I unwrap low poly models for games in ZBrush? Yeah, there are a few slices. Are you sure you're doing the same? Maybe. Well, I guess. But all the slice brushes do the same function. If it's got its own poly group. Are you certain that if you press Shift F or click on poly frames here, you're sure that they have a separate color, right? Do they have a different color when you DynaMesh? The color obviously represents what the poly group is. So yeah, to answer your question, Thomas Byrne, yeah, I do a lot because if I'm doing a mesh like this, especially, I know that the 3D bake is not going to go very well on these 90-degree edges. I'm also probably, trying to make an artistic decision between beveling these edges or just leaving them as flat 90-degree turns, and then baking really, really soft bevels into the 90 degrees. So then when you UV map it. So one thing I like to do a lot is, so right now I have all my 90-degree angles are different poly groups, and these are obviously, I would probably polygroup these back together because they don't need to be separate. But the point is that once I do that, just doing a quick UV master unwrap by polygroups. Like actually, this is a symmetrical object. Is it? Yeah, it is. I'll unwrap that, and that'll throw UVs on this mesh. And then, no, whoops, I just should not have done that. That's an accidental unwrap of everything. That was a mistake, but what I meant to do was flatten so we could see, that's really usable UV topology. And obviously you could pack some of these a little bit tighter, and you could also use the transpose tool awesomely to to move these around and do a little bit of packing there. But you know, also you could just do some of that stuff in Maya, etc. And it's really helpful, and it gets you pretty much all the way there, and then you could, you know, do some of the packing and organizing of it. But those, if I work with my poly groups and creases ahead of time, and I'm a little bit proactive in how I author that geo, it really goes a long way towards just speeding things up. Because then I can just, you know, even if I have to re-UV some of the stuff by hand, most of the UVs for like these outer shells and stuff all came through, and it was all, you know. Now let me actually delete all. Grab this thing, because I don't want to mess. I don't want to remove the existing UVs, which I just did by demonstrating that. Okay, now we're back to business here. So the main thing I think I probably want to do is I want to put wheels on this thing. I'll probably come through and keep this as a reference and do actually a new one. So one thing I used to always have to do when I wanted to grab new geo is I would go down to initialize and grab a polysphere, polyplane 3D, sphere 3D, go down, initialize, set all the parameters for it. This is actually a bit simpler now. So what I did was just duplicate it off, grab that little gear right there, and then just drop a polycube right in. Now I got my cube. I can start building the replacement mesh. Turn on transparency so I can see through it. And what I'll probably do is weld. I'll probably weld a cylinder on it, and I'm holding shift so I can like snap to angles, but then I'll let go and just really dial it right in. I'll hold alt when I'll move it. That'll rearrange the Gizmo pivot. Scale from there, so I can just back it off. So on Stormy CG. Quite new to the 3D step, but why should I do hard surface modeling in ZBrush if I could use Maya or Max? I always thought ZBrush is rather for the organic stuff. Isn't it super exhausting in ZBrush? So yeah, I mean, I've talked about this a lot in my previous streams, and there's a lot of advantages to both. However, you know, the ZModeler brush, you know, I find that getting the base G, and you can just kind of feel free to watch along. You know, I'll show you kind of my process a little bit. You know, obviously there's a million ways to do things like this. But I just find that, like, you know, the working with ZModeler, and since I don't have an exact shape I'm going for, I'm going to be kind of just like, you know, freestyling a little bit, trying to kind of, you know, figure out what makes sense with this piece and try. I like to be, you know, I kind of like, the thing about ZModeler that I like is I can be a little more organic while doing hard surface. Eventually what I basically end up doing is like subdividing this all down, getting it into high poly anyway, and then occasionally I'll jump back into Maya and do some retopology as needed. But at this stage, when I'm still just sort of like basically sketching a 3D model and doing, you know, a true block out in the sense that it's really blocky and all of the geo around it super blocky. You know, like for this is a good example because this is not a super detailed piece, but you know, I got all the bevels I needed. It catches all. This is our net for the game, and it catches all the light that I needed, and I really had no need to go hop into Maya. So I guess what I want to kind of do today is just sort of, you know, demonstrate that, like, yeah, I do both. Obviously, I kind of use whatever tool I need for the given moment, given task, but all of the pieces you see here are all hard surface, and they were all done in ZBrush, and it's they're just incredibly fast, you know. And when I'm working in silent versus streaming and talking and working, I tend to move a little bit faster. But just building all this stuff out, and with ZModeler brush, you know, these are all game resolution meshes. I just showed how I can UV them in one click, and it's just incredibly fast. It just block the shape out, see what shape you're going with, you know, get some free UVs, and then like off you go to texturing. And you know, a lot of times for us, we want to block things out, throw them into the game, make sure they show up in the camera correctly, make sure they're sized appropriately for the space. So, you know, not that you couldn't do all that in Maya and Max. It's just that, you know, because I'm doing my high resolution stuff in ZBrush as well, I like to sketch around with the. I find myself wanting. When I'm in Maya, I find myself wanting features that ZModeler has, and of course, like, you know, I'd love to be able to sort of do some of the more precise things that I would do with a mouse and keyboard in Maya and ZBrush, but the simple fact of just doing hard surface with a tablet and a pen is it's pretty surprising. I never really thought that I would, you know, get to the point where I would be using it for hard surface. But yeah, hope that answers your question a little bit, and think, you know, Lebop why, or Lunally, which is like why I do it here. Yeah, and Lebop, there's a lot of things Lebop there that Lebop touches on that communicate as well why. Kind of like it. Let me straighten this back out. I'm not sure what kind of resolution I want right now, but then, so as I showed before, so yeah, you know, I've got this geo here. Duplicate that off again. Now I've got some new geo. Go to the gear. Let's do this, probably a cylinder 3D, I think. Don't need any vertical divide, and I'd like this horizontal divide to be divisible by 3 and 4, because that'll allow me to break up the poly spans. And if I want to just do you know, 3 of these prongs versus 4, if they've got edges on both. So I guess a number that's divisible by 3 and 4 is 36, because 3 times 4 is 12, 12 times 3 is 36, and that seems like it's, you know, roughly enough geometry for me. I think that radius is probably okay. I don't need an inner radius now. You could also use this. This is a nifty one, just to like build your inner radius on the fly. This whole process here with the new 3D geometry right there in your Gizmo, like basically making 3D transforms right there, and it's just, it's such an improvement. It's such a workflow advancement. I was really excited. That's one of my favorite features. Honestly, the Deformers here and this geo being here, for someone who does a lot of this like block out low poly stuff in ZBrush, those are probably the biggest additions. That and the Boolean system are the two things that just like, oh my god, like it just changed everything. So I'm really excited. I mean, again, the 4R8 just came out, so not as fast as I'd like to be, but you know, it just comes with time. And I don't need to be super precise here. I just need to roughly match the shape that I was working with, so that I can, you know, start toying with this block out a little bit more. All right, Pancake, let's see if I can get to the bottom of this. Yeah, well, it certainly appears as though you got your separate poly groups, of course. What's this slice down the middle here? Like that slice there is kind of confusing. Yeah, DynaMesh groups is set correctly. Looks like it was DynaMeshed for sure beforehand. You're using the transpose tool. You're in R7. Yeah, I'm not sure what could be going wrong for you there. Although I'm curious as to why this geometry seems to be different. Like there's that cut there. But yeah, I mean, it certainly looks like you're doing everything correctly. You're DynaMeshed into it. You don't have any subdivision levels. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I recommend maybe you can reach a support ticket out to Pixelogic. Maybe there's a known issue. You know, if you're a user of 4R7, you can upgrade to 4R8 for free. So maybe if you go into 4R8, the issue goes away. But yeah, I've not seen that problem before. How to set text chat in ZBrush for streaming. I'm looking everywhere. How to set text chat in ZBrush for streaming. Stormy CGI, I can't help you there. I don't know what that question is. I mean, ZBrush should have nothing to do with where you put text and stuff like that. If you're trying to set up, if you want to set up open broadcast, or if you want to set up your scene, so you have a chat window in your OBS settings, that's all the broadcasting tool you're using. So yeah, Leebop, the improvements to ZModeler, for the hard surface stuff, that all happened in R7, so it's a relatively new feature. So yeah, in the concept, I've got like little wheels on it, because I know that I want to make this thing sort of be able to sort of wheel around and be like a sort of robotic distributor of the disc to people. So what I'm going to start doing is start blocking out like a wheel well, and sort of the sort of tri-wheel thing I'm thinking of here. So all I need to respect is that I need to be able to fit this amount of discs in there. So those discs are already game resolution, game size. So I just need to they're basically a stand-in, so that I know that I don't, build the wheels into the geo that I actually need to leave space for. So once again, I'll duplicate off that subtool, go into my little gizmo here, turn this one into a cylinder 3D. And the thing you'll notice is that because I translated it, the orientation of the gizmo, even on this new geo, is respected. So if I go back to home base here, home base, home orientation, that's how you'll get it back to where it was. What I want to do is rotate this around this way. About the UVs, it didn't prompt you to work on the clone. Is that because you don't have any subdivs yet? That's a good question. I usually, typically, what the rules are when it prompts you, I'm not aware of. Let me just do some grouping by normals here. Increase polygroups. Yeah, so I got some. Let's do some subdivision levels. Increase, uncrease all. Round it off a little bit, so there's like a nice rounded thing. I don't have any UVs on it yet, right? But I would, if I was gonna ZBrush, or sorry, if I was gonna do UVs in Maya or anywhere else for this, that would be my seam anyway. Like that seam right there would be my UV seam. So obviously I've got my polygroups there. Yeah, looks like the unwrapping didn't prompt for clone. I'll undo that. Typically though, you would want to work on a clone. See, it says highly recommended in all caps. You work on a clone, do all of your UV operations over here, unwrap all, copy UVs, and then switch on over, paste UVs. And if you flatten, well, you can't flatten because that's subdivision levels. But yeah. Yeah, working on a clone, I don't remember that how or when it prompts you, to be honest. Can you share this layout? Let me give you my Gumroad that has it on there. This is for 4R7, but it really did just pop right over to 4R8. I changed a few things, and this is on a 1440 monitor, this UI, and that one there is 1080 because that's my old UI. But I'm gonna I'll update that download with this UI, so it'll have my hotkeys and it'll have my ZBrush 4R8 UI, I just haven't got a chance to do it yet. R8 just came out like 2 days ago. It was just a visual bug, and oh, that's amazing. Painicus, I can't believe it was just a visual rendering issue. Well, I'm glad you got to the bottom of it. And then they Snio it. I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing that correctly. But yeah, basically just kind of showing what I just showed you. That's how I'll get UVs at an early stage. I basically after I get the block out pretty much settled. And again, every piece has its own unique challenges. So occasionally, that doesn't work, and okay, so that's a decent. Probably be bigger. I want these back wheels to be as big as they can kind of be without clipping into the area where the disc would be distributed from. So that's probably a good ballpark, maybe right around there. Mirror X, mirror and weld. Now I got a symmetrical couple wheels there. And this part then is gonna tail out a little bit farther, and I'll do a slimmer wheel. What in the world? Select a rectangle. Actually, you know what? I'll probably just grab this, do another cylinder, put it in the middle, roll that on back. Now I know it's in world aligned, which is always important to work along the origin when you can. I'm just eyeballing it to drop it to the floor here. Mortar cannon, what's going on? Yeah, I've actually I've sat through the custom Gizmo stuff, but I just don't have any needs outside of what this one does. It'd be cool if you could do like one thing would love to add is like from this camera angle you can move in the Z-axis and X-axis. It'd be cool if there was like a little corner bit that like if I could grab that like corner plane, I could move in the X and Z plane. That'd be super cool. Yeah, no, definitely. S-N-I-O-E-T, Snioet. Snioet? Snioet? S-Neoet? Whatever it is. No, I don't do UVs if I know the geometry is going to be changing. No, that'd be a waste of time. If I'm going to change the geometry a great deal, there's no real reason for that. One reason to do early UVs like that would only be if you wanted to quickly slap base UVs on there, like just not care about them, don't edit them, but just one click generate some UVs and throw it into the game engine so that you could like test a material on it, or just do a blockout mesh that actually had some material on it already. That might be a reason to do that before you change the geo drastically. But again, that's not what I was saying. I don't do UVs just for the sake of doing them. I only do them when I'm pretty sure I know where I'm at with them. So now I'm just putting slices in all the places I know I'm going to cut into. Oh yeah, Zomcast, the updates to 4R8 are absolutely, you gotta go fetch them. It's just there's some learning curve there because there are new tools there and they're pretty sophisticated. All these deformers in here are all just must-haves. Yeah, it is a must-get, absolutely. So I'm actually gonna probably DynaMesh this. I'm gonna probably make this shape a little bit more organic. So I probably want to clip away at it. So I'll just not smooth. Oh, whoops, wrong button. Pretty solid ZBrush though. So now I got a DynaMesh topology here. I'm just gonna hack away at this a little bit. So now I want to do like a, where's my clip brush? The idea here is like this is this little sort of like tricycle wheel in the back that it can rotate and pivot while these big sort of bulky wheels in the front actually are the area where the thing swings around. So it'll just kind of be, it can sort of like turn in place and squirt all around. Can I bevel it with new deformers? I don't believe there's a bevel in the deformers, but there's several ways you can bevel them. You can bevel with the Q mesh, sorry, the Z-modeler brush bevel, of course. Bevel is the whole thing. You'd also use a bevel if you want to split an edge. A lot of times you want to split an existing edge and get symmetrical edges around there. You can do that. Mirror and weld X to bring that center line back. You could also, another way you can bevel, quite interestingly, let me do it on this bigger mesh because this might be a good candidate for it. I've kind of already set up polygroups to, contain these 90-degree angles. So what you can do is you can crease by polygroup, and then within the crease menu, there's a bevel right there. So you can kind of adjust your bevel width, and you got to be kind of careful with it because it is doing a massive operation to all your geo. But if you've got good polygroups, or if you've got the creases lined up how you want them, beveling by all of your creases can often get you there. Yeah, Mortar Craner, one of the things about Booleans, it's like, my mind doesn't really function that way. And I've been avoiding them in Maya. I don't really use them all that often. But there are times in ZBrush where I think I actually have a little prop here. Where is it? Tools. TR. Here we go. So like yeah, but like using them in ways like this, like here's the full thing here. Like using the booleans on things like this, that's actually like the thing that's different for me is that in Maya I never use booleans because I'm usually only doing low poly geo in Maya. But so booleans aren't really useful for me because, you know, just I'm already working in low poly, so I'm either retoping or I'm doing just the block modeling anyway. So I mean, I don't really have any needs for booleans in that way, like things I couldn't just create by extruding or closing faces, etc., etc. But just using them as a high poly tool and using them in a way that, oh, you know, like this piece wasn't a ton of geometry, like, you know, that's only a 300,000, and you know, it's not tiny, but it was allowed me to put, you know, resolution in places, like super high frequency detail in unique places. Like that's the real win for me in the new Boolean system, is that you're sort of able to you know, add high frequency detail to meshes that don't necessarily have that much resolution without having to go super DynaMesh heavy, super polygon heavy, and give it 20 million polygons because you want to cut into it. You know, this isn't a ton of geo here. Look how separated. Like this is a really low resolution for the blade there. But you know, boolean some text into that, and you know, the boolean cut up here. This is all booleans on this blade, and I found it so much more useful. And than I ever did. Like the boolean system right now in ZBrush is more useful to me doing high poly stuff than any boolean system in traditional DCC packages has been in the past. So that's kind of my pitch for it. That you know, got me back into it. If that makes sense. Imaginator, what's going on? Let's get back over here to this little blocky thing here. So what else I want to do? Where is this geometry and why is it invisible right now? Bizarre. That's why it's good to name your subtools. These, and I'll duplicate them. Make that into a polycube. It'll be in the same place. And I can just scale it up. Turn on local symmetry so it'll stay in place here. Just basically building more of a wheel well. I'm just messing around here. I'm not really sure exactly where it's gonna go. I'm just trying to slice some stuff off and see what I can do with it. What's up, Jacob CG? How you doing? Thomas Byrne. I don't really have an art station. I've any work I've been doing is just kind of for the game. So if I have anything to show, it's usually I'm usually just working on it, getting in the game as soon as I can. So I haven't really had time to do any kind of portfolio stuff. Alright, so let's see. Now, if you look at the concept, I kind of want to have where is it? Here's like the existing blockout, a pretty old one. It's basically I want to have a way to signal left and right because it's going to kind of point to where the goal gets scored at. So I'm thinking right now it's like kind of like at a TV screen, and then like it has sort of like a hologram that kind of just and shoots out, you know, the winner at some kind of electronic light hologram thing. So duplicate that off, grab the new piece, turn to cylinder 3D, rotate it to world space. Old sketch. Basically needs to sit like the sort of fanfare I'm going to want to sit like right above that line right there. Is there a transform? Sanic, what's going on? Should I wait for ZBrush 5 or buy 4R8? I'm a school license right now. You know, I have no information, of course. I don't work for Pixelogic, but I don't have any information when 4R8 would come, or when ZBrush 5 would come out. But I know the Pixelogic guys in their live stream event, they mentioned that a lot of the things that were going to be in R5, they wanted to get in for, or ZBrush 5 rather, they wanted to get in for R8. So a lot of the ZBrush 5 features you might be waiting on are now here with the new release. And we'll say this, I think 4R8 is a game changer. I mean, it's just, there's so many features I've already can't live without. You know, I wonder if I want to widen this. I probably could get away with just pulling the wheels way out and doing like a... Now that I've got the... I realize there's this gap right here. I might want to just fill that gap and keep the tub. Yeah, I'm going to try something here. Fill the space a little bit differently. I like that a little bit better. Will there be animation in R5 or ZBrush 5? You know, yeah, I obviously can't comment to that, but you know, the thing is, it's not an animation package. However, they do have animation tools for the turntable. What I would say is that I wouldn't put anything past Pixelogic, to be honest. Like, they could be working on animation in secret, and you know, just waiting to drop it on everybody. You know, this package isn't really for animation, so you know that would be a shock. But again, I never thought of them as having, you know, low poly base mesh tools, and they drop ZModeler on it and get me to the point where I'm using it more than I use Maya now, which is never would have thought that would be the case either. Yes, I like these wheels on the outside front because then like this little pivot wheel in the back will be the thing that moves. These obviously won't turn, but if you had like a rotating wheel in the back, you could swing the thing left and right, and this wheel would pivot, and it would pivot from the contact point to the earth from those two big wheels. I think this like ratio of space actually works a little bit better. I almost want to make them bigger, but I won't do that for now. I'll delete that wheel well. I don't need that just yet. This thing is still just a stand-in. That guy. Okay. Yeah, exactly, Thunder Bunny. It's exactly how I felt about it. You just never know. Is there a Transform 3D button in the Alpha panel? What are you trying to do, I guess is the question. Ray2s. Yeah, rigging and character animation. Yeah, I mean, you know, animation in general, like putting bones, like being able to operate on bones. Is basically what you're talking about. Like, the main difference you're talking about is like having bone transforms in the world, skins that you know, deformation. So the vertices are deforming based on their weights of the bones. That's basically what we're talking about. Just like the taking vertices and manipulating them with bone transforms. Again, like there's things that would not put it past pixel logic. It's not the most complicated thing in the world. However, you know, as a modeling package, you know, the one thing you can do with rigging is actually I think there's a really good there's a pretty nifty method out there for using Z-spheres, and you can build full rigs on a T-pose mesh and then pose it. It's pretty bananas, actually. I've never found this workflow to be fast enough for me, like just sculpting things and using the transpose tool and moving the limbs and masking and moving the limbs to a certain place has always been faster for me. But there's people who've got pretty crazy rigs out there. You know, it works for some people. Transform Alpha 3D. I believe this functionality actually moved. It's included, I believe, but I think it's moved. What's up, Imaginator? How you doing?
Modified the alpha on the fly.
Yeah, you can definitely do this still. Transforming the alpha. Let me see if I can walk through it here in a second. What's happened? Just a little render issue. Let me save this off real quick, actually, just in case I start messing with things too much. You know, it could be. I'm trying to think. They moved some things around. So I'm wondering if, like, the alpha brush. Alpha from mesh. Let's just grab a more interesting mesh. Control Shift A. Let's duplicate this whole thing. Delete hidden. What on earth keeps happening where these things just keep disappearing? Anyway. Put this in the world origin. Very strange. Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I'm not trying to provide you a solution for doing 3D animation in ZBrush. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to share a workflow for people who need to pose meshes when they're doing, you know, modeling. But yeah, so if you just click in here, you can transform it. Like, it's just, if you want to make it something like that, where like that's your new alpha, there you go. You get a 3D alpha that matches the brush. Then you go back to the 3D alpha, and let's see. Drag rect. Then you have your 3D thing. And if you go back into the alpha, there's a way to get back in there. I'm just not familiar with it. I'm forgetting where it was. Make 3D. That's kind of interesting. take the alpha and turn it into some geo. That made it into a mesh. That's interesting too. There's a way to edit this, I'm just forgetting where it is. Maybe one of the Pixelogic guys can jump in there. But yeah, it's in there. The functionality is definitely in there. What's this thing? It's a knife. Just doing some scene cleanup here. I'll go back to my quick save. Recover, these are recovered docs. Where's my last quick save? I think that was it. Yeah, this is where I was. Yeah, okay. Alrighty. Oh man, it's already 1:15. It's wacky brush alpha I gotta get rid of. Oh, you know what? Let me go back to that. 'Cause I think that's actually the thing I was talking about. The standard. If you're up here in the brush alphas, you have multiple. Sorry guys, I need to just, I want to answer this question for myself so I know the answer. Yeah, see I just changed the alpha by changing the mesh to one of my other subtools. You do that in brush. Yeah, and then you could have multi-meshes if you added more geo to it. Now the alpha is the gear mesh. The only thing I'm curious about is how do I get back into transforming the thing? There's definitely a way to get into this menu. Yeah, I just don't remember what it is. I'll have to follow up with that one. I'll dig into that. I'll be aware of whatever the hell that is by the next stream. All right. Let's do an insert. Insert scene legend. Does my model have to be ultra smooth in ZBrush, really high resolution to have that output later in the render, or does the render smooth everything out if I see some polys in ZBrush if I zoom in? I'm not sure I understand the question. Like you're talking about like this is obviously got hard edge faceting, right? Like you see the hard edges there. You know, but like when you export, you know, say you do FBX export, if you smooth normals, those hard edges will go away. But yeah, if you wanted to make, if I wanted to bake this, like say I wanted to turn this into high poly mesh, right? I say crease poly groups, groups by normals, crease poly groups. I've got, you know, obviously I've got like, I can press D for dynamic subdivision, right? That's, if you hold Shift D and D, dynamic subdiv, that shows you, you know, what it'll look like with a couple of subdivision levels, and you don't have to actually do the subdivision levels. It just shows you what it'll look like, so you can work in subdivision mode or without sub D, but it looks like it's sub D. Anyway, sorry, just messing with QGrid real quick. But yeah, so like say, like what you would do is, you know, you would have your low poly geo here. You could Z plug in, unwrap, do a UV master, unwrap, get your UVs, and then duplicate it off. And now this is your new high poly geo. Control T once, Control T twice, uncrease all. Let me do it actually. Uncrease all, and then subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. And now you've got some like pretty nice beveled geometry there. And this is your high poly. And then you would just bake, you would use this low poly, bake the high poly detail. And yeah, like I hope, I'm not sure if this answers your question or not, but if you see like that geometry there, if you see like those faces there, they'll show up in ZBrush. But when you export your, if you're gonna bake it somewhere else, like bake it in a X normal or somewhere, when you export it with smooth normals on, which I think you typically want to do anyway, those hard edges will be smoothed out, and your bake will probably be kind of smooth right there. But also, of course, if I subdivide one more time, you know, it gets a little bit better. So. I'm not sure if, no problem. I'm not sure if the viewport can do smooth normals, actually. There might be materials in here that do smooth normals. Actually, I think I remember talking, or I heard somebody giving a workflow demonstration, and it had, I think it had a way to smooth normals. I think there is like a display property for that. I don't know off the top of my head, because personally I like to see that, because I do, I want to see those hard normals at all times. It just gives me a good sense of where things are going to be and self-performing. Alright, let me get back to where I was here. I can delete this one, that's where I'm at. Solo. Okay. Very strange happening. This one. This is like how flat it is. Yeah, that's what it is. 0 and 2 is those default settings, yeah, sorry. I was playing with those settings and I messed them up, so I didn't really have the look I wanted when I did my sub D. When I use the VDMs I'm making, for some reason the plane is showing up as well. What am I doing wrong? With the VDMs, Where's that VDM setup? There's a Z project that ships with R8 that has a VDM setup. One of these brush 3D templates. But to control the depth on the VDM, you want to, when you're authoring it, there's a way to control that plane. I'm not super familiar with it, to be honest. I wish I could help you out, but I'm not. VDMs are not something that I've dug into all that much. Yeah, sorry, I wish I could help you there. I think it is this brush 3D template. I think there's like a VDM project. I can't find it right now. But it has, I think if it's not this brush 3D template here, it has the exact sort of config you want, and it'll make sure the plane doesn't interfere with what you've sculpted out. The main thing I would suggest is that if you are doing it in a place like this, reset all my brushes here. So if I was building a VDM out of this thing, oh, this already has subdivision history. That's interesting. Up to 263,000. Yeah, it just, a lot of times when you're sculpting, the plane can come off the origin. So another thing to think about is like storing a morph target. If you store a morph target, and then you're pulling it off, and maybe you're sculpting, and your VDM starts to get a little haywire, and whatever. You can then come back in with your morph brush and just like paint that part of it all the way back. And then you just know that, no matter what, your VDM edges are still on the origin, and that'll just make sure that your 3D stuff stays on the plane it needs to when you drag it out. Yeah, there you go, Mist Template 3D. I think that's the one I ended up on, right? I'm not sure how these all differ. It looks like they're just by resolution. That's brush 3D template, brush 3D template 512. Yeah. So I hope that's a little helpful. Honestly, I'm not super familiar with the VDM brushes because I haven't really had a need for them just yet. And the stuff that I wanted to make with VDM brushes, a lot of the other artists had already made really cool versions of that stuff, like body parts and earlobes and teeth and stuff, and those are all things that, like, oh, what would I use this for? I would use it for those exact body parts. And so a lot of those guys have been sharing those brushes, and luckily saving me a bit of work. Yeah, exactly. That makes perfect sense. Cedacone, appreciate that heads up. They had the resolutions for that reason. Yeah, it makes perfect sense because you can't DynaMesh in that instance. You need that geometry to stay where it's at. So it makes sense. Let's get back to business here. So you have the DynaMesh object done there. What's your procedure with the ZBrush to get the best result? So if I had, say I wanted to, say this thing here, right? I think the first place I would start would be to group by visible. If I wanted to make ZBrush this, right? I don't have, you know, great polygroups, and polygroups would really help me a lot here. So I'd probably do, you know, presuming if I was more careful with my cuts, I would have polygroups in all these places. You know, this is a little just polygroup by curve. If I had polygroups in all the right places, having groups like this is really helpful because it suggests to ZBrusher where you want to put your low resolution stuff, where you want to find your edges and things like that. As you can see, the new DynaMesh algorithm does a lot more, you know, edge work to preserve edges as well. But from there, ZBrush keep groups is super helpful. Might even do a little quick polish by group so it rubs those edges out a little bit more. But if you keep group ZBrush, say we want to do like pretty low resolution, then I'll do a decent job of just maintaining geo around there. You know, like, is this a game ready mesh? I mean, it's 5,800 points, so that's a little dense, but you know, it gets you really close. It has nice you know, group info there. You know, got a little messed up with here, but I could always come in and retopologize that. You know, it depends on kind of what your needs are. Ahmed. Well, all right. Appreciate you stopping by. They can they export all of these as well. So the guys at Pixelogic will. This will be on the YouTube channel. Yeah. Here I'll do a Q mesh by poly loop. I'll just bring this whole thing out. I also wanted to do like if I hold control, it'll actually bring the thing off of there. So once again, I got a poly loop by poly group, hold control, and that gives me new geo that stands out of it. So what I want to do is get it to the point where it's sort of just clipping over that frame. Probably a little taller as well. split him, pull that part off. This is a good opportunity to use some deformers. Actually, now that I think about it, it'd probably be better just to have it. So what I'll do instead of bending this curve, now that's basically where I want the curve. I'm going to turn this into a cube. I'll deform this cube around it. Turn off smooth, get some subdivision there. Here's the fun part. Yeah. That way I can kind of be a little trial and error and have a little bit of a control the radius of it. I basically want it to sort of wrap around but not encroach on each other. Yeah, it's a much nicer shape than what I was getting. Basically, it'll be like a 3D. It'll be like a TV with a little bit of a bend. It's like just basically a bend monitor. Because the main thing is, I know the camera's back here, and while it's not going to be something you'll kind of get a ton of information off of, it won't be like game critical. It'll be a nice little, you know, live piece. And then when you're actually facing it, like in the trial modes, it'll be staring right at you, and it can present information to you. And that's useful. Not sure why it's rendering. Not rendering the edges there, but it's really necessary. It's very strange. Perhaps because they didn't commit this. Accept. Inset, polygroup, set region. What's going on, Ashley? I missed your stream yesterday. I was at E3. I saved an IMM folder instead of a chisel folder. Is that the issue? Deformation morph to grid. Look at that. Yeah, there you go. E3 was a lot of fun. Still wearing a bit of the old fashions that I had last night, but yeah, it was good. It was a blast. It was really good to catch up with a bunch of folks I haven't seen in a while. Didn't do too much of the old show floor stuff, but I had a really good time. Catching up with some game devs. No, whoops, what have I done? Basically, the purpose of this little guy is to, it's going to be sort of like a hologram type deal. Let me split these off here. I'll also probably do a clip curve. Ashley, what'd you make last night? Actually, let me just bring it on up. Why didn't Pixelogic didn't do their export yet? Twitch, Pixelogic. I want to see what Ashley made on her stream last night. She's makes these awesome creatures. I wonder how much did you do a lot of 4R8 stuff? I've been getting a lot of questions today. The one from yesterday. Doing some VDMs, I see. Nice. Yeah, you're doing more R8 features than I am. I think I was gonna get into some booleans today, but I mostly just been answering questions. I see the foot brush made it into the VDM work. That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, so the thing with this is, when a player scores, we want to do like some fanfare. So like, this really would be a hologram that when the player scores, it shoots out the width of the court and sort of like points to the red team, points to the blue team. Meanwhile, this television screen would say like, you know, goal or whatever the hell it would say. So the main thing I want to do is just like placing this mesh is like make sure this is a little thing that generates the hologram, but it also needs to sort of fit the like, you know, where the player would see. Like, you want the player to kind of make sure like the camera's like back here in our game. So like you want to kind of make sure it's big enough to show up. I actually kind of feel like it's not big big enough. Just a bit taller, probably. Hold on a sec, someone's at the door. Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys. And there's gonna be like a siren on top here. I feel like all of this should be taller. Yeah, that's a little better. Because you're pretty far back in our game, so like the camera is like way back here. It doesn't need to be legible. It just needs it's gonna be like an effect. This polygon is just gonna be like a lot of materials animating over it and just sort of shooting out waves of like this team scored, that team scored, and it kind of points at the team that scored. So I think a little bit more height is exactly what I need, because now it'll be at least like from back here, it'll be visible, and it'll shoot like up and down the length of the court. It actually came in right in time because I got a VDM question. That was not very helpful because I didn't get into VDMs all that much. So I also wanted to do like a little bracket here. Let's try this. Just do a little insert brush arena. Got a cube right there. Right back in the center. Split unmasked. Basically, the purpose of this little doodad is going to be to support this monitor, or this panel, I guess it would be. But it's not always going to be there because in the practice modes it won't have this little bit, so. Oligraph, what's going on? AVBN 500, and yeah, the 4R8 added so many game-changing features. I was talking about it earlier, but this entire menu under this cone, or under this gear, is so good. These deformers are all great, and these base geo creation methods are so good. And yeah, I was showing a little bit before. The Booleans are really exciting because I think, as I was talking about earlier, the Booleans, like, you can add so much high resolution detail. How it differs from every other 3D package is how you can use the cut mesh to have a lot of high detail, and the way it generates resolution on very low resolution meshes like this blade is just so useful for getting like kind of unique shapes. Honestly, it would have been so painstaking to model all of these teeth. You know, it's obviously doable. You could do DynaMesh and use a very, very high amount of geometry and then come back in and maybe clean it up and do some look. But like, you know, maintaining these crisp edges and doing super low resolution stuff, and you know, getting the high resolution here, all that stuff is it's such a game changer. You know, I used all of the deformer stuff to sort of bend this grip in the way I wanted. It's just everything was just so much faster, so much more intuitive in R8. Yeah, huge as usual. Pixelogic delivers just a massive upgrade with the new release. I mean, I remember R7 added the Z modeler stuff. There's no joke itself. So I'll duplicate this off. Turn it to a polycube. why these things are coming in so small, but they are. You also want to be careful when you're doing, if you want to edit the gizmo for the like the geometry that we just had to do. You want to be careful not to. Thank you. Careful not to modify the topology after you're, or modify the topology before you start transforming it, because it will inherit the transforms that you do on the gizmo. But once you start like adding edge loops and stuff like that, I mean even Maya has trouble with that, and there's just not a solution for being able to be cute about that. Yeah, I totally agree, Ashley. It's like, I'm still a little bit like, there's a lot of things that kind of just like throw me. And I'm not quite, I'm still kind of like getting the hang of things, where things are. Oh, actually, you might know the answer to this, because someone asked this earlier, and I didn't have an answer for them. So say I had this, right? Make it an alpha from mesh, and like they wanted to transform this. Obviously, they got the transform options here, right? So you're transforming your mesh. Frame it. Recenter. So say I transform that. Say okay. All right, got my alpha. Is there a way to keep this alpha, like just edit this one that exists? Like say I lose this mesh is gone. On that alpha, like, is there any way to like re-enter the sort of 3D transform, the transform 3D? I could have sworn there was, right? I could have sworn like Paul demoed it, but yeah, I'm not really sure where that would be. I guess you just do from mesh again, but I could have sworn there was a way to like bop in and out of this. Yeah. If it's not at the top of your head, don't even worry about it. I know you're probably at work, so don't even worry about it. It's not at the top of your head, no big deal. But it's just something that somebody asked. I could have sworn I saw Paul do it, but I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't find any. I drilled into the brush menu for a while, and I drilled into the alpha menu, but to no avail. Got window size back here. Yeah, this would probably be a lot cooler if this was like this. Jeez, come on over here. This like fit. I think maybe I'll just fasten. Oops. Just eyeballing this so it's right in the middle. And maybe I'll fasten, like basically what I'll do is I'll make this thing sort of look as though it like fastens to the side of this like kind of base pole, and like it'll have maybe some like ratcheted sides so you could like assume that you'd be able to like slide it up and down. That'd be a little bit cooler. It's kind of dumb too, to be honest. It's probably this. I thought I remembered Paul editing an alpha without the mesh. I guess that's how it's started. Yeah, that's the 3D alphas. Yeah, there's like 3D alphas that remain 3D. Like this one's a 3D alpha. And under the hood, I believe, that means that it's editable after it's been set to the texture. I could have sworn it was in brush somewhere. And you have like multi-alpha brush. And I was able to get to the point where I was like able to have multiple alphas and then jump into each mesh and swap the meshes out. So I was able to swap meshes out of my alpha brush. But as far as like getting back into I could have sworn it's possible. I'll have to ask and follow up next week. Anywho. Well, appreciate you looking. Fasten that. Holograms come out of there. A little siren on top. I kind of want to do. Part of me wants a siren on top, but I also kind of would like to do like a, just like a sort of a, like a firework launcher almost. Maybe both. Oh yeah, that's why you want to work on a clone. If you're making UVs for something, say I want to UV this, right? If you're gonna make UVs, work on a clone, because flattening and oftentimes just unwrapping, flattening and unflattening will lose your creasing. That's just a necessary evil of ZBrush. But if you work on a clone, you can do whatever the hell you want to it. you know, you'll lose all your creasing. If I unwrap symmetry and polygroups, it's unwrapped. I've got my creasing maintained, but if I want to double check how it went, I'll flatten it. Shows me how it is flat. Deplug in, unflatten, all my creasing is gone. So that's just a necessary evil of that. But what you can do is I've got my UVs now. Copy UVs. Go back to the original. Plug in again. Paste UVs. Oh, but I lost my creasing. I could have sworn you were able to keep creasing after you did that. That was my previous workflow, and maybe that's a bug because I could have sworn the copy paste UVs didn't used to lose your creasing, but as you can see, my creasing did get lost when I pasted the UVs. Yeah, I'll have to bring that up because I don't believe that used to be the case. That might be a new issue. Anyway, what's going on, Dr. Fish? Welcome. You did work on a clone, yeah. So yeah, you just saw the same issue I saw. What's going on, Reginator? What's up? Welcome. Get back to my trusty matte crap gray here. Alright. Insert single edge loop. Let's put one like right there. You know, if it's got these big bright holograms shooting off to the left and right, then it makes sense to have a siren at the top, but cap this off with something, but I'm not really sure what. I believe because I remembered. It's 36. Get in there. There we go. It should line up exactly with the other geo because it had 36. Hey, Originator, what's happening? Look up some hockey sirens. Doing alright, just still trying to tinker with this R8. Trying to build some environment prop stuff here. Control Shift X, it'll grow it out. Lose that cap. Auto groups. Delete hidden. I got this thing. All I want is that. Let's reverse that. Delete hidden. Alright, now I've got 2 open. There's a faster way to do this, but I kind of, when I'm doing Z modeling, I think it just helps to do this way. Roll that down. There's a lot of ways you can make that shape right there. I kind of been tinkering with that little method real fast, where I just kind of eyeball it and weld them together. Pretty happy with it. So the main thing I want to do now is pull off the cage of it. extract actually. Can't believe how clean that geometry is on that extract. Yeah, fake sweet. I think you know, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat there, and definitely wouldn't be out of the question to hop in another 3D package for that stuff. Later, guys. See you, Ashley. Thanks for stopping by. At the moment, I'm just kind of exploring what I think this shape should look like. Not actually married to any design right now. I just want to see some blockout shapes and see what makes sense for them. Once I guess. Grab a quick bite, lest I starve to death live on stream. Again, I'm just ballparking here. It really just is just a 3D block out for what I think this shape's going to be. This doesn't need to be. It's basically just, you know, a 3D sketch of what I think might work in this space. Hey Blands, yeah, so you can definitely open R7 files in R8, of course. If you save a file in R8, you cannot open it in R7. So this is a nifty little trick for Z-modeler brushes. I use this a lot when I'm just kind of like want to put a little arbitrary curve. Close. Bridge two holes with a spline. You get kind of a nice, you can interactively scale elevation and resolution just by dragging your pen up and down. Oops, I meant to change. Circle is a good one. Yeah, this is more apropos for a handle. When exporting a high and low res model for substance as FBX, is it better to delete subdivision levels, aka have one ZBrush file? So the thing about subdivision levels is they're actually smaller files, because if I have something like this, right, and I want, this is obviously the low poly and it has UVs. Increase my polygons real quick. Say like this is a low poly, right? I'm gonna export that for baking. So I'll duplicate that off, call that CL window low. This is CL window high. This will be my high resolution. I'll subdivide this all I want. You know, say it's up to 500,000 polygons now. You want to get all those nice little soft edges there, right? So there's the bake mesh. So your question is for a couple things. One, I keep them separately. I keep them separate for two reasons. For one, if I unsubdivide this, I take it all the way back to there. You see how they're not the same? When you subdivide with smooth on, the extra subdivision levels are going to reduce the size of your low poly. So like when you have your low poly set, which this one would be set, this is the exact size I want it to be, I can still bake this high poly detail successfully even though it's off that much. And it depends on the shape, of course, too, because like something like that knife I was just showing you, something like this, if I start subdividing this blade here, it starts getting really chunky and it rounds out those corners. So you also would lose that nice solid detail you had there, but you know, all you really want is more resolution. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis, but the long and short of it is, when you are separating the two and you are using both, you asked about the relative like size of the file, and so what I'll say is right now you can kind of see when I put polyframes on, it shows the lower subdivision levels. If I delete lower, it only has high resolution detail. This actually makes it bigger because the file itself has to write out all of this information, all of these individual vertices. So the difference between this is obviously has a lot of vertices still. It still has the same amount of points, of course, like they both have 500,000 points, but this has to write into the file when you export 500,000 points. First of all, two things. One, this is smaller, this is bigger in ZBrush than this will be. When you have 6 subdivision levels, the way it treats it under the hood is these other layers are multiplications of this base geo, and on top of those multiplications are, you know, any deformation you might make, you know, on top of, you know, for each subdivision level basically. So because you have those as multiples of these lower states, there's some savings in ZBrush there. You'll see those savings in the ZTL files. However, if I go back to 500,000 polys, if I delete lower and export that as FBX, it's going to be the same file size as if I maintain my subdivision level and export this as FBX. FBX that you export will be the equivalent of, you know, just this much vertice, this many verts in geometry. That's going to be the export. So you won't save any space in the file size of your export, but in ZBrush it's often beneficial to keep them, you know, to let them maintain their subdivision levels in your high poly, because it'll make your ZBrush file faster. It'll make your ZBrush file smaller. When you're tumbling around, you have multiple tools and you're tumbling around, having the subdivision levels helps it, you know, you might rotate, and while you're rotating it'll switch to the lower subdivision levels and rotate there. So it's worth having, it's worth keeping. But again, sometimes I want to take my high resolution mesh and then I want to do DynaMesh and make some surface noise adjustments to it, whatever it might be. A lot of times I'll lose my lower subdivision levels. It's not the end of the world. It's just something I try to keep if I can. And it depends on how I subdivide. It depends on from mesh to mesh, character versus hard surface. It always depends. Oh no! Got a crash. RIPME. Let's bring it back up. Looks like it was able to save my project. Yeah, that's a surprise. Nice, did save everything. That's pretty good. Wicked Dimension, how you doing? You know, I think also I might want to do some speakers on the top of there. Doing okay. Just trying to do some blocking out here. Duplicate this. W. Cylinders 3D. Hey, what's going on, Brandon? How you doing? Yeah, Wicked Dimensions kind of like it's kind of an arbitrary little piece actually. It's you have the concept here. It's basically like in our game we have like a half court area where there's this little mechanism. It's like a robotic mechanism that distributes these discs. It's a frisbee game, so it kind of like feeds discs out to the player. And basically what I'm doing is just giving it like a little bit of a tweak. I want to make it so it's like mobile, so it can be like, it'll like distribute, it'll like be able to like drive around the rink and like shoot discs at you while you're in practice modes and stuff. And sort of, you know, has this big screen TV on it that's kind of like this curved TV, and it would like display the score and stuff like that, as well as this little piece here that like when one of the two players scores, it like shoots out like a hologram that kind of like points at the winning side for that point. And then on the top here, I'm just putting like what I think is probably gonna be like a little speaker system, like some kind of like just little like collection of little speakers around, so that when the air horn goes off, you see it. It's kind of like an arbitrary thing. It's like it's a fictional little kind of sci-fi piece that you know, exists in this non-existent sport of ours. Here's like a concept, if you can see that. It's basically, you know, the rough sketch of what I'm working on. Yeah, no, it's like, it's weird because it's one of those things that it doesn't exist. So I'm kind of just doing some blockouts right now and just doing some sketches, because I know like the kind of shape it has to fill. It has to fill like this exact size. These are like our actual, like that's the actual net and our actual, you know, barrier plates in the map. And then like this thing's basically you know, just a little sort of piece in this fictional universe. So I'm kind of winging it because I'm trying to figure out where I want it to go. I know that I want, like, the gameplay things I need from it are, you know, the hologram that kind of signals the winning side, the screen to kind of say, you know, and then I use it in practice mode too, because like when we use it to distribute the disc in practice mode, this screen here will say like shoot left, shoot right. It'll be stuff like that. Automated lawnmower is a pretty, definitely in the inspiration. I think the lawnmower look is very accurate. And so you can see, like, you basically, what I basically think makes sense is, you know, these wheels will be fixed, but that wheel is like sort of like the pivot wheel. So if you imagine like one of those like tri-wheeled, you know, carts or something like that, the back wheel pivots, or the back wheel can turn, and then the pivot would be on the big wheels. The big wheels could turn in place, so it could like turn in place and then like move around the court on its own. It's like a robotic thing that like goes around and like spits the disc at you in practice mode. What scale is this thing relative to the players? So I actually wanted to find a player mesh so that I could like just bring them in as a size reference. Let me see if I can find one that's not too oversized here. Very much like a personal Zamboni, of course. Yeah, exactly. Wicked Dimension, totally true. Yeah, there's no way to. It would have to move. But actually, to be honest, I think in my intention is it's that it actually is kind of meant to look kind of silly. Like if you imagine like those kind of like a Looney Tunes almost, like you know, like almost like sort of like a Disney-esque like exaggerated movement, like as opposed to like just like sliding back and forth and being kind of like slick. It's meant to sort of like it'll have like a lot of leaning in the movement. Like the animation of it will like, it'll like tilt over as it's spinning around. It'll be very kind of cartoony in its movement. The whole game's kind of cartoony. There's a lot of like overlap and follow through in our mechanical animations, as opposed to being kind of sleek and mechanical and like maybe easing in and out the way like a proper robotic system would work in a, you know, in a well-engineered like futuristic environment. Ours is like a futuristic environment with a lot of like bounciness and then like cartoony sort of. So I think the design of the tub kind of fits that, because it'll have to sort of like tilt over and like go that way and then like pause and like wiggle to a stop, and then like you'll swing over and go over here and then swing and turn. So it'll be kind of, you know, yeah, a lot of neon and such. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, it's a lot of you know. Here's like a little screen. So if you go to, here's an example, discjamgame.com. There's a trailer on that website, and it kind of shows. It's a pretty arcadey, silly game. So like I kind of, that the environment, I want to sort of like, you know, feed off that a little bit. Yes, right now it's mostly just block out. I mean, didn't do a lot of detailing or like beveling. I'm still kind of just concepting what I think makes sense. I had a hockey style siren up here before, but I think that it'd be cooler if it was just like speakers that kind of like pulsed and like bounced a little bit. Because I don't think a hockey siren would be all that necessary when you have this giant hologram shooting out. And it's like shooting like arrows, like red team wins, red team wins. And it's like when it's doing that, I don't know that a hockey siren sitting on top of it really achieves anything at all. Yeah, it's like air hockey meets tennis. It's like it's just a silly arcade game that you know, it's basically Pong. It's all juiced up Pong. I'm having so much trouble. I'm just moving this where I want to go. Local sim, mirror, Z. Probably a lot smarter way to do that, but. about that a little bit. I think it's a little too symmetrical up top. Like, I mean, just having like 4, it's kind of just boring. Maybe just like do it, split it into thirds and offset them a little bit. I'll have to think about that a little bit. I think thirds might be a little bit better. That's it for now. Yeah, didn't get into much R8 stuff as possible. I was answering a lot of workflow questions in the beginning about for R8. Most of the stuff I was doing this stream was just, like I said, blocking out and kind of just doing some 3D sketches of where I think things might make sense for this little prop here. The design is kind of arbitrary, and had to do a little bit of a, experimentation here to see what I think might start working. But that's it for today. Thank you guys for coming by. Next week we'll be doing more of the stuff I showed in the beginning, which is there's more environment stuff, but stuff that's more concrete and easily executable. Things like the trunks and searchlights and fireworks and the things that I kind of already have kind of a clear design for. This one's still kind of up in the air. I'm still kind of figuring this one out and seeing what kind of things make sense. Although I'm pretty happy where I landed on it, because I think that this shape is going to work. Cause the main things I wanted to do were have like the TVs on both sides, because there's like an actual crowd stuff behind it, and then in the front the players would kind of be able, since it's a curved TV, the players who are like kind of seeing it from this angle would be able to see like the any kind of fanfare going on that monitor would show up for the players. And then this top thing is going to sort of just we have this air horn, so like if these things have like speakers on them, then you'll kind of see it kind of go, and you'll see them like we'll animate the shader so that with the air horn and stuff it like vibrates those speakers. So yeah, this is all, again, this is all just sketching and block out so that the concepts I have, I can work towards and make sense of when it goes into the game. But the main game design things I wanted for it, I think are present. It's going to be able to be mobile. It's going to be able to, slide around and look like somebody would, look like some kind of tech from the field would come out and push it out there and, insert it into the net and be part of the court there. And but still, kind of more noodling to do. Obviously, it's this kind of fictional mechanical structure. I like to, break up the base shapes to be less boring and maybe like show how these things all faceted to work with each other. But yeah, have a good weekend, guys. Enjoy the news out of E3 and enjoy ZBrush R8. It's a really, really awesome big release. I've been having a lot of fun with it so far. Alright, guys. Until next time.